The Thunder officially end their losing streak by downing the Rockets 105-103, looking at a 7-5 record at this point in time. And moving forward, we're going to ask some tough questions of this team and really put them under a microscope, as well as what happened last night against the Rockets. First, I want to bring in Donnie. I want to bring in Zach. How are you guys doing?
We're doing all right.
Doing well.
Good. One of my biggest questions, one of my biggest concerns when I look at the game last night was the dunk. It's something that a lot of people are going to continue to talk about simply because of the type of play that it was. But I want to get your guys' opinion. Donnie, I'll start with you. Give me your thoughts on the last-second dunk.
Incredible, but one of those things where if he misses, it's like you're like, oh, no, please don't take it. And then like, oh, my gosh, it's awesome. It's one of those things where, like, you get benched. Not that Russ would get benched, but I'm sure Billy Donovan wasn't the most happy, but then he was super happy when it went in.
What about you, Zach? Are you in agreement with Donnie?
I mean, as far as a basketball strategy play goes, that's not what you do. You try to waste the clock. You try to avoid getting fouled. Obviously, don't turn the ball over. But at the same time, that is got to be the most Russell Westbrook thing that he could possibly do in the situation. If you watch what led up to it, I believe it was Corey Brewer was guarding him. Couldn't stick with him. Russ is so fast, and he just blew past Corey Brewer, and just to get the ball in bounds and to avoid the 5-second violation. So he gets it, and he's in a perfect spot to drive. And I think it was almost more like instinct kicked in over, maybe what he should have done. But kind of like Donnie said, if he misses there, we're all scratching our heads, kind of wondering. Kind of like last week when he took that ill-advised three at the end of the game to try to win it. If he makes that shot, he's a hero, but he missed it, so we're all kind of like, really? Like, that's the best thing we can do.
Right.
So he pulls the dunk off, and obviously he's SportsCenter top 10 instantly. Everybody's talking about it. I don't know if you guys saw the picture of Corey Brewer's reaction, like, while it's happening. He's got this look of, oh, dear God, no, please. And Clint Capella, I mean, there's no telling what's going on in that guy's head today. He's got to be hopefully recovering well, because it was not pretty for him.
I actually saw a short little video of that dunk where someone, as soon as Russell Westbrook dunks it, all of a sudden through the basket you see a lightning bolt, which then chars Clint Capella as he freezes and falls to the ground. I don't know how they did it, but it was fairly hysterical. When I'm looking at that play with 7 seconds remaining, I did a little bit of search on the boards. A couple of the Houston fans are pointing out that Russell Westbrook did not establish himself as an inbounds player. You saw that he gets pushed out just by the nature of the course that he was running and only has 1 foot back in. Do you think that basket should not have counted? As Thunder fans, I think I know the answer here, but give me your quick take on that. Are Houston fans overreacting?
Have you seen the video? Did you confirm that was the case? Because I hadn't even noticed it.
I did. I went back and watched it. Just quickly pulled it up on YouTube. He clearly runs he maybe takes 3 steps out of bounds. He's in the air, 1 foot comes down, and he makes the catch. It's so quick, though, that if you're an official on that scene, it's so hard to tell. It's so hard to make that call, especially when that could be a game deciding factor.
I guess I'm not super sure. I mean, I'm not an NBA official. Not that I think they're great all the time. Does 1 foot inbounds determine possession? I mean, or being in the court?
By
or do you have to have both?
Rules, no. It does say you have to have both to establish yourself back in bounds after running out of bounds.
Yeah, I'm sitting here. I'm watching the replay, and obviously it's not in slow motion, so I can't. It's impossible to watch Westbrook in normal play half the time. He's so quick. It almost looks like he simultaneously catches it as his second foot is touching, or maybe he catches it slightly before. So, I mean, obviously I can understand the argument, and they're going to say, well, if Westbrook hadn't have made that shot, Eric Gordon comes down and he hits the three, and all of a sudden it's tie game. And you can play the what-ifs all day, and I actually missed the entire first 3 quarters of the game because of other activities I was taking care of. But from what I could tell, Thunder fans were not happy with the officiating at one point in the game, so it kind of makes me wonder, you can pick and choose with one call here, one call there, but what it came down to, you could also argue Westbrook got fouled on the play. There was no foul call there.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't think it's worth saying going back and fussing about. In the middle of the play, had it been brought to an official's attention, I don't know, maybe they could have reviewed it, but apparently nobody made a big enough fuss to do something about it. So, I don't know.
I think as well, everyone's like, well, Eric Gordon would have come down and hit a three. The Thunder didn't play defense really that last play. They're up by 5. Why? What's the point? You don't want to foul a guy. You don't want to do something stupid. Who's to say Eric Gordon actually hits that three? Because the Rockets, until they hit that shot, they'd miss like 14 3-pointers or 13 3-pointers in a row. It's not like it's a guarantee that just because if Russ, say he would have been called out of bounds, it would have been Rockets' ball. There's no guarantee that they even come down and hit that three. They had no – yes, shots go in the NBA, players make plays, but it's not like the Thunder were playing their, toughest, tightest defense when they're up 5 with 7 seconds left or however much time was left.
Talking about the defense that the Thunder played, Zach, can you break down how the Thunder were able to slow down James Harden, a guy who's averaging 30 points, all of a sudden drops 13, and something I think that would have been unexpected for a majority of people, knowing that it's really the showdown of Harden and Westbrook, two guys who are going to be competing for that scoring title at the end of the year. So how were the Thunder able to slow him down?
Well, when it comes down to it, the Thunder's post presence is fantastic. A lot of the time, Steven Adams is down there, and whether he's actively making a play on defense, at the very least, he's clogging up space. James Harden loves to drive into the paint, and I noticed the free throw count was not very high, so either he wasn't getting the calls that he usually gets, or he wasn't making the type of plays that he usually makes. And based on the number of shots that he took, I think he took 14 shots, something like that, 16 shots. A couple of those were in the final seconds. He only took 16 shots, which for a normal player, that's kind of a high count, but I'd be willing to bet that's significantly under what his average is. And the fact of the matter is the ball probably wasn't in his hands as much as it normally is, and that comes down to Andre Robertson. Robertson is what he is. He is not an offensive threat whatsoever. He sits in the corner, and he'll knock down some of those threes every once in a while, and then other times he'll do what he did last night and bounce it off the side of the backboard. He's not pretty on offense, but when it comes down to defense, he's grown so drastically over the past few years, and he's been labeled as an up-and-coming top-notch defender, and I've kind of questioned that at times myself. But based on nights like last night, it's pretty clear that he gets the toughest assignment of the night, and he does a pretty consistent job. And I think a large part of the defensive success falls on his shoulders last night, as he just keeps the ball out of Harden's hands. And even when Harden has it, he's making them take terribly tough shots. And Harden's not used to that. He's used to getting open, whether it be screens everywhere, taking wide-open threes, that type of thing. And he did have a few wide-open threes, but he was just – I think Andre's lockdown defense consistently got in Harden's head, so even whenever he got an open shot, he wasn't right in his mind, and he wasn't able to get some of those points that he's usually easily putting up.
Donnie, do you think it's a tactic that the Thunder can use against a team, say, like San Antonio or even Golden State?
The problem is Golden State has like 4 guys that are like James Harden. Golden State, I think the thing with the Spurs, I think you see the fact that they'll involve more people. Obviously in their offense. I feel like the Rockets, they have like Ryan Anderson and Gordon and those guys, but I feel kind of as if it's kind of James Harden's team. He's very ball dominant. I think the thing that I thought last night is I feel like at times a guy like Harden, he needs to be more selfish than he was. I know he's played point guard this year, and I know he's put up incredible statistics, but I felt like last night it's like, okay, Robertson's guarding me. I better not look for my shot. I better help to get these other guys involved. And I think it just kind of took him out of the flow of the game. I was grateful as a Thunder fan. I just felt like there was something with Harden last night. It's like I got to distribute, I got to facilitate. When a guy like him, honestly, I think he's got to be a little bit selfish. He's got to demand the ball a little more. I think some of the shots he took were later. And up until the fourth quarter, he really wasn't involved in the offense. At least he was passing. But I don't know. it just seemed like something was off last night. As far as the Thunder employing that defense, sure, that's great. But against Golden State, yeah, I don't know. I think the way to beat Golden State is to kill them inside. But so we'll see what happens.
Looking at this matchup, looking at James Harden, a guy who helped take Oklahoma City to the finals back in 2012, the real question here is, as Oklahoma City fans, can we move on? Is it okay to like James Harden once again?
Yes.
Donnie, you go first.
Yes. Because for all of the evil that supposedly James Harden, as far as leaving the team, I think a lot of that was directed at Patrick Beverly, who, by the way, didn't play last night yet, decides to get in Robertson. I don't know. That guy's – he's not – anyway. But the focus of the attention is now shifted to the guy who now plays for Golden State. Harden had some really good comments to say about Russ and the team. I'm kind of starting to like the guy again. Maybe I'm crazy, but maybe the beard and I are kind of getting back together, I guess.
Zach, do you agree?
On some points, yes, but overall, I can't get behind Harden's style of play. I feel like he manipulates officiating, and he gets to the free throw line far too often. I guess, more power to him for learning. That's his trick of the trade, and that's really how he is such an efficient basketball player. But I'm just not a fan of that style of play. I still think his defense is just atrocious. He's so suspect on that end of the floor. It's bad. But in terms of personality-wise, liking him, I don't know if you guys watch a lot of the commercials and stuff, but he's got some pretty funny commercials, and it's hard for me to just not like those. So as far as personality goes, I can chalk that up to that's a positive thing. But I think Donnie's got it hitting the head on the nail with the fact that now all of the Thunder hate has seemingly transitioned to the guy that's playing with Golden State now. We didn't like Harden because of, really, there are a lot of suspected reasons why he left. But the obvious one is he wanted more money, he wanted his own team, that type of thing. He didn't really fit in terms of the culture of the Thunder, and whether you agree with Presti on that or not, I think that's a personal point of view. But as he has been gone, I've kind of noticed, I don't know if he would have fit in very well here. He wanted to be the main guy. I really do think he likes being what he is to the Rockets, even though they haven't been as successful as he would probably hope. I think he's pretty satisfied with what he's doing in terms of his personal statistics and being the leader of the team, that type of thing. But I don't know. I think it's going to be hard for me to really ever feel a positive type of way about him just because I'm not a big fan of the Rockets, and kind of like Donnie mentioned with Patrick Beverly, that whole thing just kind of adds to it. So I don't know. It's a personal decision, I feel like.
One thing that you mentioned is James Harden, a guy who's elevated himself to superstar status, if you will, within the NBA, mentioning he doesn't play defense. How many of these superstars actually play defense that aren't named LeBron James?
Kawhi Leonard, maybe. I would say that's really about it. That would call superstar on that level, Kawhi Leonard.
I think my comment would be maybe they don't always, consistently, but they can. Harden, I don't know if he can. I've heard people talk about when he was in college, playing for Arizona State, he was a pretty solid defender. But as far as what he's capable of in the NBA, the videos out there are just, you're talking high numbers of clips where he's literally standing around on defense, watching the ball. Guys drive right by him. He loses his man. And, I understand that happens to everybody. You can find a clip like that about any player in the NBA. But it happens so frequently with him, it just blows my mind. So, and I guess whenever you're scoring 30-something points, you lead the league in assists, coaches aren't going to make a fuss about it as much. But if you're playing for my team still, it would be a concern.
One of the biggest knocks that anybody has against a guy who is MVP-type talent, not saying that James Harden will win one this year or even in the foreseeable future, but when I look at those guys, the biggest knock I hear against every single one of them, Steph Curry included, is their ability to play defense. LeBron James, Kobe Bryant are the guys that I think, they're making the all-defensive team in the NBA but they're also competing for that MVP. I don't know that I ever would have put Kevin Durant into that same category or that same grouping, but again, we like to celebrate the good things. We like to celebrate the scoring, and that's across all sports. We rarely celebrate defensive players when it comes to the Heisman Trophy on the college level of football. It's always awarded to a quarterback, a running back. We put wide receivers in the conversation. I know this was completely random, but Russell Westbrook, would you put him in the same category as a James Harden, or is he a better defender?
Westbrook has the capability, without a doubt, to be, in my opinion, to be a first team All-NBA defensive. I don't know if he'll ever consistently put forth the effort to get to that point, but, he shows time and time again. Whenever he wants to play defense, whenever he's fully committed to it and the team altogether is playing defense, then he's on ball handlers like a hawk. And I think part of the reason sometimes his defense suffers is because the team defense suffers. And you could probably say the same thing about James Harden. But when there's a breakdown in the defense, it's really hard for one guy to recover if everybody else cannot recover. One thing I saw last night against the Rockets was there was a breakdown in the defense because the Rockets were moving the ball so fast, and after a missed three, they got the rebound, and Thunder defense was not in position. They were not prepared to play defense again. They were expecting a rebound, and quickly got penetration in the paint, but Steven Adams recovered and immediately blocked it. Thunder got the ball back. I think for Westbrook, it can be really frustrating for him to be this incredible athlete. He's definitely carrying the team on the offensive end, and then he comes down to the defensive end and somebody else breaks down or whatever it may be, and he's still having to carry on that end too. So I don't know if he's taking plays off or what that may be, but I definitely think he's capable of playing defense. Like I said about Harden, I'm just not sure that he can.
Talking about Russell Westbrook, he's always going to draw the most attention when it comes to comments, when it comes to headlines. Colin Cowherd's one of the guys who's jumping on that boat. He's labeled not only Russell Westbrook, but Carmelo Anthony, as well as James Harden, as guys who will be stat stuffers but will never win a title because they lack self-awareness and maturity. Donnie, I know you've got some strong opinions, so tell me, do you agree or disagree?
I always wonder why they give guys who just are paid for hot takes, why we really pay them any attention whatsoever. They exist on every network. They exist on all the radio stations. I guess that's what sells. I think it's ridiculous. There's so much that goes into a championship. Players have to stay healthy. Shots, sometimes you hit the incredible shot. Let's be honest. Kyrie Irving hits the most incredible three to win the game to win the finals. LeBron James chase down block. Draymond Green kicking guys in the nuts so there's a guy suspended. There are so many things that go into winning a championship that to say someone like James Harden or to say someone like Carmelo or Russell Westbrook don't care and they're just stat stuffers, I think that's stupid. I think that's ridiculous. But again, he's paid to say stupid stuff.
He's not 100% wrong about Carmelo Anthony, though. We look at how long he's been in the league. Guy puts up ridiculous numbers, still doesn't have that championship, and it doesn't matter who they've put around him at this point in time because they've had some pretty good players on the inside and they've had some pretty good players on the outside in New York. Just hasn't ever come together, and they're still looking at a team, Derrick Rose, Carmelo Anthony, Porzingis. They've got, a former MVP, a guy who can put up incredible amount of shots as well as points, and then one of the youngest but most brightest stars, I would say, one of the brighter stars with how young he is in the NBA. It's not going to come together for them, in my opinion, and so I think there's some validity to it, but I'm not willing to write guys like James Harden and Russell Westbrook off because we're just now seeing Russell Westbrook without a guy like Kevin Durant. He is the guy. James Harden has been the guy for quite some time now, but Russell Westbrook hasn't had that opportunity, and I do think it's a bit unfair to throw him into that category. What about you, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, Donnie's dead on. This guy gets paid to say crazy things, so that's what he's going to do. He's going to say ridiculous things. In that same conversation of talking about them just being stat stuffers, he lists Russell Westbrook and James Harden as two of his top 8 favorite players. So at least according to the media, that's what he thinks. And I just don't get, what his reasoning really is. I mean, both guys are still pretty young in their careers. I mean, Russell Westbrook's obviously got a year or two on Harden, but I believe it was back in February, Colin Cowherd said something along the lines of Westbrook is, I think it was he's a convertible. He's not necessary. He's just flashy. And, I mean, I would love to hear him say that again with this season with the Thunder because, let's be real, without Westbrook, the Thunder are nowhere. They're maybe scratching the surface of 15 to 20 wins. Westbrook's going to carry the team. He's carried the team so far, and that's just kind of the role he's going to play. So he's definitely more than just a convertible. He's definitely necessary. I think it's really premature to even make those kinds of comments. I guess it's easy to say whenever things are looking bleak because you've got teams like Golden State, San Antonio, Cleveland that are looking like powerhouses that aren't going to go anywhere for a little while. So I guess, is it really a bold statement to claim they're not going to win a title whenever – I mean, winning a title is a hard thing. It's not like you can just go out there and do it, just decide, we're going to win this year. It takes more than just having a few good players or whatever it may be. So, I mean, I think he's just looking for a reaction. Obviously, we're talking about it, so I think he got what he wanted.
Looking at the 12-game sample size that we have, would you say, Zach, I'll throw this one at you first, would you say that the Thunder will once again win the Northwest Division?
It's going to come down. I'd like to wait to really make a full comment on that until I see them play Portland, just to kind of see head-to-head how they're looking. But
right.
I think Utah's kind of been favored even by some people to win the division. I personally don't think Utah is going to be too much better than they were last year. I do have them picked to make the playoffs, but I don't know if they're going to, be a top seed in the top 4 or anything like that. It could heavily depend on what Presti's going to do with the rest of the season. We've had our conversations about the number of different trades that could be made, and I definitely think Presti's, cooking something on the side. He's working to put some things together to really make a push once it comes playoff time. But I still like him as the Northwest Division favorite. I don't really see reason to think otherwise. We had a rough 4-game stretch there for sure, but I took a look at the schedule today, upcoming games, and I'd like to go on record saying I think we've got a really good chance to win the next 9 games in a row, making a 10-game winning streak. I think that would be huge for Oklahoma City because there's the following 13 games, I think it is. There's quite a few tough ones in there, so we could really use some wins against some of the lower-tier teams. But I think around Christmas we'll have a lot better idea where we're sitting concerning the rest of the season. But that could all change with a big trade. So who knows what Presti's going to do between now and the deadline.
Donnie, looking at what Zach's saying here, we know this team started 6-1, currently standing 7-5. Could they go on that 10-game winning streak? Would it put them back, at least in a fan's mind, back into contention, maybe looking at a 4 seed, maybe, I don't know, a 3 seed if all goes according to plan when the playoffs finally roll around? My real question is, are we looking at a team that's capable of that 6-1, or are we kind of being pushed towards realizing this team's more of a 7-5?
I think they're closer to 7-5 than 6-1. I think 6-1 was great, but I mean that record is reserved as constructed for teams like Cleveland, for teams like Golden State, for teams like the Clippers this year. Do I think they're 7-5? No, I mean they had some stretches where, I mean, they were in the game against the Clippers at home. They were in the game against the Raptors at home. They didn't play well down the stretch. This team could very easily be setting 9-3 right now. I think 8-4 makes sense as far as I think it's. But I mean, I don't know if a 3 seed makes sense at all. The best team in the Northwest, I would cautiously probably pick Portland over them. I think Russ is better than obviously Damian Lillard, but the supporting cast around Lillard makes more sense, at least right now, than what's around Russ, at least in my mind. I'd like to see him play. As far as a 10-game win streak, yeah, it'd be great. I think 8-2 would be. I'd be ecstatic. 7-3 doesn't sound terrible either, but the 10-game would be a little rough. I don't know if I could go be that high on him quite yet.
What, in your opinion, though, is the most, I guess, pressing issue that the Thunder need to address? What's their biggest weakness that we've seen so far?
Russ needs help. And I know some guys kind of fill in every now and then and have a game. I mean, Oladipo was great last night. But he needs a guy that he can count on night in, night out to get 17 to 20 points a game, play decent defense, a guy that he can, if he rests, the team doesn't fall apart. Gosh, when he went to the bench in the first quarter last night, I mean, they were killing the Rockets. He goes to the bench, and next thing you know, the Rockets go on this gigantic run, and the Rockets bench is killing the Thunder bench. They need someone else that can carry some scoring load consistently. I don't know if that person's there on the roster right now. I'd like to think Oladipo, but, man, I don't know.
Zach, if you disagree, by all means, let us know. If you have something to add to that, for sure add that. But I wanted to ask you the opposite end of that question, and what has been the biggest strength for the Thunder?
Biggest strength has got to be Russ, night in and night out. I think that's kind of the obvious answer. But aside from that, I really do feel like the defense has been surprisingly good for the most part. We've had some letdowns in some games. Donnie mentioned down the stretch, struggling against Toronto and the Clippers, and definitely not where I think we could be based on the 6-1 start. I thought we could be a lot better than 7-5, obviously. Should not have lost the Orlando game. That was honestly the first loss of the season that I was frustrated with. I understood losing to Golden State. They were just clearly the better team that night. Toronto, they're a good team. I understand. They've been together for a while, a lot of those guys, so they just picked it up down the stretch. We faltered. They won. Losing to the Clippers at home in a tight one, I kind of expected that just because we beat them at their place, so I expected them to come back firing on all cylinders. But losing to Orlando on that last-second shot to Serge was just a shot to the groin. It shouldn't have happened. So that really hurt us. But overall, I mean, I've been pretty pleased with our defense. I just wasn't sure that was going to be a thing for us, but it really has been. And some other concerns were ball movement and shooting from behind the three-point line, which, in all honesty, I've been pleasantly surprised. We've had flashes of brilliance in terms of sharing the ball. Had another not just decent or good night last night shooting from behind the arc, but a fantastic night. If we could shoot 12 for 25, not even every night, but, every few games, I would be thrilled. It sucks whenever we couple that with games like, I think it was the Pistons, where we were just awful from behind the three. So that definitely needs to be something more consistent. Yeah, we shot 5 of 27 in Detroit. That type of night cannot happen. But in terms of weaknesses and getting Russ help, I think I definitely think Oladipo can be that guy. I think last night was probably about where his ceiling is in terms of playing alongside Russ, and he's had some pretty awful games as well. So I think he's just trying to find his happy medium. I saw some different talk about trying to bring in Rudy Gay and stuff like that. If we were to bring him in, I think we could move him to the small forward and then push Andre back to the shooting guard, have Oladipo come off the bench between if we could make it work roster-wise. If we had Oladipo and Enes Kanter coming off the bench, there would be no stopping that second unit offense, which that's where we've really struggled. Samaje Kristen's got the ball. He's kind of being the floor general, I guess, is back at point guard, and he's just clearly not quite there. He is through and through a rookie, third-string point guard, and he's struggled. And I think when Russ and Oladipo come off the court at the same time, there's just nobody in there to really control the flow of the game, to put up those points without really having to find help. Either of those guys, I feel like they can score at will if they need to. And so I think immediately Billy Donovan really needs to work on restructuring some of the rotation, maybe not have Depot and Russ off the court at the same time. Obviously, you're going to have to at some points, but just try to limit that. And in doing that, I think that could solve some problems as far as immediately goes.
Trade talks are always a big conversation that goes on in our group meet. So, Donnie, I'm kind of going to let you answer. Zach there, give a rebuttal, if you will. But Rudy Gay is a name that continuously pops up with Oklahoma City. How do you feel about him?
Lukewarm, I guess. I love him for this year. I don't know if I love him enough to want to re-sign him to like 4 years, $16 to $20 million year contract. That just doesn't. He's 30, which I mean, and like normal people, that's really young. But like in the NBA, that's starting to get on the wrong side of things. And I think that he would be an immediate help this year. I think that he would fit in incredibly well. I think that he makes sense. I mean, he's got off to a historic start. I mean, he's not going to shoot 42.5% from three for the rest of the year. That stuff like that's not going to happen. But even if he regresses some, I mean, he's a career like 36, 37% three-point shooter. The only problem is if you've got to give up, say, Cameron Payne. We don't know. I mean, I'm not as high on him as some, but you did draft him in the lottery. He did flash some signs of actually being, competent running the team and shooting the ball. He needs to put some weight on. But do you give up a guy that you can control for the next 3 or 4 years and then bring him back as a restricted free agent for what amounts to a half-season rental for Rudy Gay? That's a difficult decision. If I had to put a gun to my head, I'd do it. But I'd have to think long and hard about, does Rudy Gay fit and if we want to bring him back. And I think if the Thunder trade for Gay, I think they have to bring him back. I think they have to re-sign him because if not, you're basically just giving Cameron Payne away.
Zach, who would you bring in? Who would you be willing to give away realistically in order to get a guy like Rudy Gay? And maybe Rudy Gay's not your first option. Maybe you're looking elsewhere to make a trade to bring in some help to surround Russ. Who are you bringing in and what are you willing to give up?
I mean, in an ideal world, I'd love to bring in a Jimmy Butler type of guy, but obviously we can't make that work roster-wise, salary-wise. But I wasn't real big on the Rudy Gay idea preseason just because I've never really been a big fan of his personally, just his attitude flashes at times. But the more I've really looked into it and thought about it, the more I just feel like he would be a good fit. Donnie's dead on, though, with talking about is it worth bringing him in for a half season. I think it would have to be one of those types of stipulations where we would have to get him to somehow agree to take less money, because I was looking at his contract. He's getting like $13 million a year right now, which I think that's probably about what he's worth. I know he means a lot to Sacramento, but we're talking about the Kings here. They're getting points any which way they can. Rudy Gay's not going to be that same style of player here in Oklahoma City. He's going to be a supporting cast, whereas out there, he's kind of like the lead of the backcourt. Yeah, they've got DeMarcus Cousins and they've got some other somewhat talent, but he's just not going to be that top dog in Oklahoma City. He's going to be a consistent backup to Russ and kind of offer that support. So if we could get him to take less money and stay here for a few years, that'd be great. He is kind of getting old. Once guys hit about 30, I kind of start to worry about him in terms of NBA play. And but I don't know. I think if we were to bring him in, I'm looking at the roster, and I'm not really sure who we would move. If we would even, like I said, I mentioned I mentioned Oladipo and Cantor playing on the second unit. I don't know if we could bring in Rudy Gay without trading Enes Kanter away just to make the salaries line up. So it'd be really difficult. You can see that's Donnie's specialty more than mine. I don't know if, of course, Presti, he's a genius. I call him a wizard all the time because I feel like he's always working on something behind the scenes and we just don't know about it. Because when you look over the years, a lot of these blockbuster trades and moves that he's made, he makes them like out of nowhere. Just like the whole trading Serge and bringing in Oladipo and Sabonis on draft night, like that was totally out of left field as far as I knew. I mean, I don't know if other people had heard rumors or what, but I was not expecting that at all. So I would be willing to guarantee he's working on something, trying to figure something out, and so I'm interested to see what that is.
Hey, I'll be a nerd real quick just for a second, if anyone really cares. Is that all right? Maybe?
Yeah, Go for it.
Okay. When they Ersan Ilyasova, they created what was about a $7.1 million trade exception. And Presti can renounce that at any time. So they would have $7.1 million in cap space. You throw Kyle Singler's $4.6 or $8 million in there, you're getting really close to 13. Throw Cameron Payne's salary in there, you're right in the range with Rudy Gay. So Singler and Payne do get it done. Would the Kings want more? Maybe. Can they get more for a guy who's going to leave anyway? Probably not, but it's possible. So Singler and Payne get it done. So that's on the table.
Continuing with our theme, I'm stepping back just a little bit. When we were looking at the kind of the highs and the lows, or the weaknesses and the strengths, what's been one of the biggest surprises? Zach, I'll start with you.
I mentioned three-point shooting, ball movement. Aside from that, strengths. Domantas Sabonis has shown flashes of brilliance, and he was actually one of my preseason favorites as far as the new guys go, just because I had heard a lot of scouts were big on him in terms of his maturity as a rookie and just his fundamentals, which makes complete sense just coming from the lineage that he has and his dad, Arvydas Sabonis. But the more I started really paying attention to him, not just what he does once he gets the ball, but as far as setting screens and sealing guys off and that type of – his footwork is fantastic once he gets down low. He's not a real big guy, not a real strong guy, but I've seen him make some solid moves to get into the paint and get some easy buckets, just outmaneuvering guys that are bigger and maybe even better than him. But then he pulls it out and he starts knocking down threes. Now, he hasn't been as successful the last few games, hasn't been putting off shots, but he did something that hadn't been done since James Harden was a rookie, having multiple games of making at least 4 threes. So I don't know if that's like a consistent thing. He didn't shoot very many threes at all while he was in college at Gonzaga. So I don't know if this was like a small sample size, he kind of just got lucky, or if that's going to be a consistent thing. But if he could continue that, then by all means, he's earned his starting spot, and I would love to see that continue. I'd love to see him average double digits for us night in and night out. That would be fantastic contribution, and that'd definitely be some of that help that Russell Westbrook really needs.
Donnie, one of the things we really haven't touched on was something that you sent me. I'm clearly out of the loop when it comes to this. So what's the lowdown when it comes to Steven Adams and a hand issue?
Well, it hasn't affected his ability to shoot free throws, which I don't understand how he pretty much is making everything after being really unable to make anything. But I think it's affecting him. I think it's affecting his ability to obviously catch passes. I think it's making, so much of his game is predicated on someone getting him the ball. He's not a guy who's going to take someone off the dribble. He's not a guy who's going to, pull up and get a mid-range jumper. He's going to be a guy that attacks the basket off of the pick and roll. He's going to be a guy that sets and then catches it and has a little hook shot or a little he's not. And so when his hand, he got hit, and gosh, I'm gonna forget which game it was. He went to the bench immediately, came back, everything was fine. He's been playing with a wrap on it. I think it's affecting him. I think it's affecting him not necessarily as much defensively, because you're not really necessarily having to catch passes. I think it's hurting his ability to be that, that guy that just goes up, catches hoops, and the guy who dives to the basket on pick and rolls. I think that's major. Hopefully it's not something that'll be nagging throughout the rest of the season. But honestly, with the Thunder's luck as far as injuries and Jones fractures and knee surgeries, it wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me at all if he had some sort of ligament issue or something like that. This seems to be par for the course for the Thunder.
Would you say, Donnie, throwing this one back at you, Steven Adams is the rim protector for this Oklahoma City Thunder team?
I think pretty much. Obviously you got Jeremy Grant, who, by the way, I love. What an incredible trade, in my opinion, and we can talk more about him if you want. But yeah, outside of Adams and Grant, that's really, those are your guys. I think it's something that Adams will have to improve upon. He's not like some light side guy. He's a guy that's intelligent, guy that is able to do those things. A lot of times, big time shot blockers, they're not always like super great defenders as much as they are help defenders. Like Serge, he was able to roam, and as a result, he was able to come and double guys that were shooting and doing things, and so that makes you look better. So even though Steven Adams doesn't have like gigantic block numbers, he's definitely probably him and Jeremy Grant are the two guys who would be anchoring that position. I think, his hand, as far as defensive, like I said, doesn't really affect him, but offensively, I think it's hurting him.
All right, guys. I'm out of questions for you. If you've got anything, now's your opportunity. Now we'll close it out.
I was just going to comment on the hand thing. They asked Steven Adams last night if it was affecting his offense, and he flat out said, this is a quote, "It ain't the hand, it's just more like I just have to make it." And so basically he's not trying to blame anything on his hand. I don't know, guys, they try to downplay injuries depending upon who they are. Of course, if you're up 3-1 in the finals and you lose, you want to try to blame health as a factor on one of your star players like a team last year did. But with Steven Adams, he's not trying to blame anything on health. They even asked him, is it weird playing with a wrap on your hand? And he said, he basically flat out said, I don't like to use that as an excuse. I just think I need to play better. I just need to make the shots. And he owned up to it. So whether he's legitimately injured and it's a lingering pain and he's just struggling with that, whether he's dealing with the wrap and it's awkward. I can't imagine how it wouldn't be awkward. But whatever it is, he's owning it and he's realizing, look, I got to make these shots regardless. I can't afford to be injured right now. I can't afford to make excuses. So I'm hoping it's just a funk that he's in and he gets out of it quickly, because he showed some incredible potential early in the season, that last game of the preseason. And I had such high hopes for him coming in, and he really hasn't produced very much at all. So I'm hoping it's just a funk he's going to find his way out of and really start to surge as really being the number 2 option for us.
One of the things that you guys talked about in the past on a podcast was really the value, the money value of a guy like Steven Adams and whether he could draw max contract type money. Looking at him this season, moving forward, if he is injured, if he isn't injured, moving forward, do you think Steven Adams can be that max contract type guy, and will Oklahoma City keep him in the long haul? Zach, that's to you.
It seems like guys are pulling out contracts all over the place that don't really necessarily have the type of talent that I would think they would be worth. Like Rudy Gobert for the Utah Jazz, I think he got like $1 or $2 million more than Steven Adams got. And I mean, Rudy's got some talent without a doubt, and he's a guy that Utah has to have because he's kind of their anchor defensively. But I don't really think he's within reach of Steven Adams in terms of potential, in terms of what he can offer right away. So whenever I see other guys getting paid some ridiculous amounts of money, and it just kind of has me scratching my head, this is the type of situation where you have to chalk it up to Sam Presti just doing a good job. I think Steven Adams deserves some credit because I really do think he's made it clear that he loves Oklahoma City. One of the very first things that he said when he was drafted was how excited he was about coming here. And I think that says a lot about him as a person. He comes from a small country, big family, small country, and I think that's kind of how he looks at Oklahoma City. Like, we're a small city, but the Thunder organization is a big family, and I think that resonates with him. And so I think, he probably was able to demand a lot more money. And I think he settled at where he was at because it was a fair amount, and he agreed to that. And another thing I saw this last week was that the reason the extension didn't get done sooner was because his agent was unable to get a hold of him for 3 days. I think it had something to do with him dropping his phone in the cold tub or something like that. So his agent couldn't even get a hold of him. And if he'd been able to do that, then the extension wouldn't have even been like a last day type of thing. It would have been done, squared away. Nobody would have even been wondering. So I think that is just one more thing that kind of adds on to the persona of Steven Adams. He's a team player. $100 million is a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but I really think he could have demanded more. And I think he took less because he recognizes what the organization is about, what they're trying to do, and he's bought into that. And just as a fan, I appreciate that from not just him as a player, but him as a person. So.
Well, guys, we're going to close it up. I'll say it seems as though most Thunder fans are in agreement right now that something must change, and that change is to find Russ some help offensively. Get someone else in there who can score and who can do some things for this Oklahoma City Thunder organization. Outside of that, you guys can find us daily at Heartland Sports. That is heartland-sports.com each and every day. Zach, I'm going to let you plug your guys' Twitter.
Yeah, you can follow us at the Thunder Guys, all one set together. We're live tweeting all the games. We've got previews and rapid recaps up for every game, and as well as any other type of extra news that we can throw out there at you guys.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys. Zach, Donnie, thanks for chatting with me, and we'll catch you next time.
Yeah,
thanks.
Have a good one, man.
When I wake up, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. And when I go out, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. And if I get drunk,